What do spaghetti, fettuccine, and me, Father Jim, have in common? We're all pastors. While you probably use the collective term pastor to describe spaghetti and fettuccine and macaroni, you might not be so familiar with the term pastor to describe a parish priest. You've probably heard other Christian churches use the term pastor to describe their church leader, but not so much in the Catholic Church. But pastor is the term used in the official writings of the Church, including the Code of Canon Law and the documents of the Second Vatican Council. The term pastor means shepherd, and it's the same term as the word we use to describe something to do with sheep, like pasture. And it's a word I really like using for myself. In the Old Testament, God is sometimes described as a shepherd who will care for the sheep. Most famously, in the psalm we use today, "The Lord is my shepherd." And it's the language Jesus used to describe himself in chapter 10 of John's Gospel, which we hear today. It's a term of care and love, not harshness or punishment. Actually, the metaphor gets a bit mixed in chapter 10 because sometimes Jesus says he's the shepherd, sometimes he's the gate to the sheep's pasture, or sometimes he's the gatekeeper, but it doesn't really matter because in all three images, the focus is on the care and nurture of the sheep. And that's what Jesus is getting across, that he embodies God's love and care for humans. I think if Jesus were making this point today, he might use the image of a dog owner or a cat owner who loves and cares for their pet. But in Jesus' time, there were no pets, so shepherds and their sheep was the best image Jesus could offer his people. So when we speak of pastors in the church today, we are speaking of people who, because of their relationship with Jesus through ordination, share in embodying God's love and care in the way that Jesus himself did. There's a beautiful line in the Bible where God says through the prophet Jeremiah that I will give the people shepherds after my own heart. But this is not just about ordained bishops, priests, and deacons. We all have a relationship with Jesus through our baptism, so we can all share in doing pastoral care. Pastoral care is one of those rather broad terms which is used to describe a whole range of actions, and it can be difficult to define. Is there any difference between pastoral care and just being kind to someone? Well, yes, but the recipient of that care or an onlooker might not notice the difference. Pastoral care is about the motivation we bring to care. If you visit your elderly neighbour across the road or take them a meal because you want to live out your Catholic faith and do as Jesus does, then that is an act of pastoral care. If your next door neighbour, who's a nice person but not a believer, also visits that person, then it's still an act of kindness and part of being a good neighbour, but that's not pastoral care. Pastoral care is also about what we do next. After visiting your neighbour, you might then pray about and pray for them. You might tell Jesus what that encounter was like for you, whether it was hard or easy, life-giving or challenging. Pastoral care flows from our prayer life and returns to nourish our prayer, whether that's by me as a pastor or you as a baptised Christian. And I want to say this today because I'm hearing so many great stories of the pastoral care which is already happening in the parish as people reach out to each other to check if they're okay during the social distancing and shutdown. Think for a minute about who you might have reached out to in these past 6 weeks. Now, pastoral care can be done by institutions with rosters and timetables and programs, but it's better done with relationships. Let me give you an example. There's a group of senior parishioners who always come to the Vigil Mass and sit in the southern transept. You know who you are. They arrive early and they have a chat together before Mass begins. And they've been doing this for I don't know how many years or decades. But now, while Mass is off, they're phoning each other and checking in on each other. And this is fantastic. The relationships built over years of greeting each other and being at Mass together have become relationships of pastoral care when it's needed most. Now, I know those people, they're okay. But my concern, though, is the people who come to Mass but who don't know anyone. They might arrive late or leave early or change Masses in churches each week and never get to know anyone or to get known. Or maybe they're always there but never talk to anyone. My mum once told me that the man who sat in front of her in church died. I asked his name. She didn't know. I asked how long she sat behind him and she said, about 10 years. 10 years of being in the same church. 10 years of sharing a sign of peace, yet she didn't know his name and only found out a month too late that he died. So while the church still isn't open, there are some things which both you and I can do. You can reach out to people you know who might be feeling lonely or vulnerable. Don't assume they're okay. It's been many weeks now and people are starting to feel the challenge of that. It's better that too many people call them than that no one calls. And you might want to reach out to people you don't yet know, such as some of your neighbours. There's care cards in the bulletin again this week, which you can download and then write on and drop under the doors of your neighbours in your apartment block or letterboxes in your street. It doesn't matter what religion your neighbours are or aren't. You're not reaching out to them because they are Catholic, but because you are Catholic. And this could be the start of a wonderful relationship. Meanwhile, the parish team and I will continue to phone people from our parish database and try to connect with people who are in need. It's a big job, and there's lots of people who haven't yet given the details to the parish. So do contact us if you haven't yet, or if you need to update your details. And the size of this job also highlights to me that we need to have a pastoral care coordinator who can ensure that people in need are followed up and not just dropped once the church doors are open again. And when you come back to church, build relationships with your fellow parishioners. Don't be like my mum and that unknown man in Werwoi who never got to know each other. We have the opportunity to come back from COVID-19 as a better, more connected and more intentional parish community than ever before. We can share in God's shepherding of all people. We can all do pastoral care. We can all love like Jesus did so that everyone will have life to the full.